show. This is Welcome to the End of the World podcast. I am Matt, and that is Travis.
Hi there.
And we are, I guess, beaming from our bunkers to whatever bunker you are living in, this post apocalyptic wasteland we call the United States.
Yeah.
Tonight, we're going to be talking about Resident Evil,
Resident Evil.
which is a fun topic. But before we get into then, this is an interesting day, so I feel like we would be remiss to not talk a little bit about the things that have happened recently, as
hmm
well as the day that we're recording, because this is kind of a an important day for people of our ilk, our millennial brethren,
Yep.
our 19 late 1980s, early 1980s to early 1990s little fuckwads that we call millennials, at least
Yeah.
my millennial group. So what do you want to start? I guess
Well, I
about your
have
day.
something. Well, I was gonna say my day was not. It's been better than it
Yeah.
was the past few days. Saturday, I had the distinct honor, a milestone, emphasis on stone. Had my first kidney stone.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, most insane pain I've ever been in my entire life. I called an ambulance because I thought I was dying.
Holy
I had
shit.
no idea what it was, and I
Yeah.
just thought my insides were exploded. I was pretty
Oh.
sure I was internally bleeding, and
Oh.
I was throwing up.
Oh.
It was bad. So I get there, like in the ambulance, they give me morphine. It does nothing,
Oh.
fucking nothing. And
Oh
I'm just
Lord, no.
rolling around, just and I don't like to be loud or anything in public at all. That was out the window. And
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
I I get in there to the ER, and they give me another meds. And I hate pain meds. I do not. I won't take Advil unless I have a fever. Like I don't like taking pain meds. But I was ready for anything they were going to give me, and because it was literally insane. Like I genuinely felt like I was going crazy.
Insane in the membrane.
Exactly, man. And they gave me some other medicine, and it helped a lot. And they got the CT scan, did all that, did all the blood work, they did urine test, all that, and they said, sure enough, there's a kidney stone. So
Jesus.
they just were going to let me go and deal with it because there's nothing they could do. So
Yeah.
but before I
Ugh.
left, they were like, "Do you want us to top you off with some pain meds?" I was like, "Yes." I mean, this is a nightmare situation. I'm like, I can't stand this pain.
Who am I
So
to say no?
they gave me fentanyl before I left,
What the fuck?
and
They gave you
yeah,
fentanyl?
they gave me, and I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, I it works. I was
Holy
so
shit.
dizzy though, like
Holy shit.
it was intense. It is no joke, but it worked.
Holy shit.
But it sucked though because
Oh,
the pharmacy ended up closing before we left the ER.
yeah.
So my entire Saturday night was just me rolling around in pain, throwing up all night. Luckily though, at some point in the night, I think I passed it. I don't know when it happened,
Yeah.
but I drank a lot of water while I was still way drugged up, and and it was enough, I guess, to just push it through. And by around maybe 10 or 11 Sunday morning, I really didn't have much pain anymore.
Yeah.
So, but that was also whenever I finally got my meds from the pharmacy. So I finally got my anti-nausea meds, which godsend, by the way, because
Nice.
I hate throwing up. But so yeah, so now I've got this giant bruise on my hand from the IV. It was it was the paramedics that did it, so they were like kind of rough with it because they wanted to do
Yeah.
it fast. And so they blew out one vein, so now I've got this giant bruise all over my like the back of my hand. Look like an abused elderly patient at a nursing home or something.
Jesus Christ. From the bruises and the fentanyl, you were really getting into like a Bret Easton Ellis, a junkie kind of situation going on here. William
Exactly.
S. Burroughs
Me of
kind of
all
thing.
people. I'm so
You gotta
scared
make
of
sure you
any
don't have a loaded
medicine.
gun next to you.
Right? I'm the most terrified of drugs, and here I am,
Yeah,
just getting pumped full. So,
that's insane. That's
but
insane that
yeah,
they gave
so
you that. Yeah, I have a fear of kidney stones. My dad gets chronic kidney stones.
oh no.
I have
Oh,
never
so you've
gotten
seen
them.
that?
Well, I've seen him in the pain. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This was back like when I back in like the 90s, early 2000s. It's been quite a
Hmm.
while, so it's a little bit different with the I think what they gave him. I don't even know.
Right.
But I know that he got them chronically, and I
Oh
have to
God.
this day, going on almost mm, late 30s, almost 40, have
Hmm.
not gotten a single one yet. So,
Oh,
knock on
chances are.
wood right
Because
there.
let me tell you,
But
I never
yeah.
even once thought it never crossed my mind.
Well, speaking
Now
of
it's all I think
doctors,
about.
I had a
Oh
doctor
yeah,
situation too.
yeah,
So the last time we recorded, I was sick and
yeah.
sounded sick. Still probably sound a little sick because I still am sick. Turns out have pneumonia.
Uh,
Um, yeah, my wife is
Jeez,
also sick with pneumonia. It sounds
dang.
like getting her
Oh,
some help here soon as well. She's a little bit behind me with how her symptoms hit her, but just by a few days. So
right.
last week I went to the doctor as well because I missed all of a week of work because I was out sick with pneumonia.
Dang.
And doctor went fine. They were actually wonderful to me. They treated me so
Yeah.
kindly and nicely, and it was amazing. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had at any doctor.
Hmm.
It was amazing. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. However, the reason that I ended up going to that specific doctor was because they were a free clinic.
Oh, there you
And
go.
the reason I went to the free clinic was because my health insurance plan does not take effect until the beginning of October. For those loyal listeners, you will realize we are not in October.
No,
So I currently have no health insurance, and going to the doctor and spending hundreds of dollars was not really an option.
no.
So I went to a free clinic and they did me well. I was very impressed. The nurse practitioner was amazing. And she gave me a doctor's note because my boss did not believe that I was sick.
Oh my God.
He did not think that my raspy voice or my constant chronic coughing that I am having to stop recording every about 20 minutes here to address is was not sufficient. Needed a
Oh boy.
medical proof. The doctor was quite funny. She's like, he needs to come hear your lungs then, and I was like, thank you. It's nice to have someone with a degree from an actual medical institution support my opinion that I was
There you
fucking
go.
sick, not my medical opinion.
Yeah. Right.
The medical opinion of a doctor who can
Oh
tell
yeah. Yeah.
that I was sick. So talked about
Dang.
our shitty days, I guess. So
Yeah.
let's
Right.
talk about something maybe a little bit more. Well, I was going to say more interesting
More,
and
more
more.
broadly,
Well, I was going to say more happy, but it's really not. We're basically
it's
going
definitely
from
not.
shit to another shit pile because, unfortunately, we lost James Earl Jones, and
Yes.
I don't think we can not talk about James Earl Jones because he was just a big part of a lot of the movies that I grew up watching,
Oh,
at least.
absolutely.
Um, so just like off the top of my head, like just like Doctor Strangelove, first off.
Hmm.
My dad, when I grew up, was a big Doctor Strangelove fan. My dad loved Stanley Kubrick movies. Probably is the reason I got into movies like the ones we've been
Yeah.
watching from a fairly early age. I've been watching most of these since I was a kid. Um, and a lot of that was because of those that early introduction to Stanley Kubrick and Doctor Strangelove and seeing James Earl Jones in that, and then
Hmm.
my dad being like, "That's Darth Vader," and then being like, "Oh shit, that's Darth Vader," like, "Oh my god," and then like obviously Darth fucking Vader, and then Lion King, obviously.
Yes.
And there's just so many movies. Do you have a favorite James Earl Jones movie
Oh,
that anything that stands out to you other than
there's
the
so
ones?
many. Like my intro to him would have probably been see because I didn't have that. My parents weren't movie people,
Yeah.
so I picked all that up on my own. In fact, I learned about Star Wars because I was in like some speech therapy class when I was in elementary school,
Yeah, yeah.
and they were just talking about the characters, and that was my intro to Star Wars. But for me, it would probably be something like Field of Dreams or
Oh, Field of
uh,
Dreams. Yeah, that was a
yes,
big one too.
it
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
that one.
my dad was a big Field of Dreams fan.
Yeah, That might have been one of the earliest. I think. Uh, I don't think I understood enough about him being Darth Vader at that time. I mean,
Yeah,
I picked it up later, but and then after I watched movies like that and Lion King, like you said, The Sandlot was another one.
Sandlot.
Uh,
Yes, yes, he was
yeah,
in the Sandlot. Yes.
is. So it was things like that that really that hit. And then of course when I got older, a little bit older, like Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, where he played
Yeah,
the king.
his range is amazing. He could go from
It's
being like
yes,
intense, like an intense dramatic actor,
Mhm.
to being a very funny comedic actor, with the right
Absolutely.
casts built around him. Because he is
Mhm.
hysterical in Coming to America, just playing
Absolutely.
the straight man to everyone else's, kind of comical characters. Yeah, he's in I mean, just a ton of movies. Obviously, some movies that maybe we'll ever talk about on here.
Yeah.
Conan the Barbarian.
Conan the
Yeah, he's in
Barbarian.
fucking Conan. Yeah.
Oh,
It popped up in a bunch of other things. One of the ones that I really, really like of his that this whole him dying, unfortunately,
yeah.
did make me go and look at through his movie list, and I was like, I think I've seen a lot of these movies. And then I stumbled upon this movie from 2001 that I remember seeing on Cinemax, or HBO, one of the two. And it's kind of a little, it's almost like a play, but it's turned into a movie, and it's a fascinating movie called Finder's Fee.
Oh, I
And
haven't
it is
heard
a
that.
Okay. So I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. It's worth buying. It's like $3 on Amazon. If and I would totally say it's worth $3. So the premise
Yeah.
is there's this group of guys, and the cast is pretty good. You got Ryan Reynolds.
Mm.
Um, you got Dash Mihok, I think is his name, the Benvolio from Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, okay.
He's been in a ton of movies. I think he was also in Starship Troopers, maybe. Robert
Oh, okay.
Forster is in it. James Earl
Oh, yeah.
Jones, um, Eric Palladino, and Matthew Lillard.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so it's got a pretty good cast. And basically, these friends are playing a poker game for lottery tickets. And
Mhm.
before one of them comes to the game, he finds a guy's wallet. And so inside the guy's wallet is like information and also a lottery ticket. So they calls the guy, and the guy shows up, and it's James Earl Jones. And
Mhm.
it kind of goes from this like kind of funny, like it's not really a buddy movie, but it's like it's kind of presented as like this kind of like funny like drama about these guys playing like a poker game amongst friends, and they're just kind of talking. So it's very like 90s indie kind of comedy in that sense. And then it kind of changes ever so slightly as the plot develops, because once James Earl Jones shows up, you find out that he's there for the wallet, but he's also
Mm.
going to play the poker game, and he's interested in winning all the lottery tickets.
Mhm.
And perhaps someone's been lying to each other, and the tension just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And James Earl Jones is really, really amazing in it. And it's one of
Yeah.
those movies where he kind of goes from being like, if you've only ever seen him play like kind of like wise old black man, or like
Right.
very like friendly roles, seeing him
Mhm.
play like intense is really cool, because he
Yeah.
gets really intense in this movie. And it's definitely like a fun thriller, that I had not seen in years. I went and bought it on DVD.
Yeah.
That's as soon as I went back, and I was like, oh, I fucking forgot about that movie, because it was one of those movies that like, see, this is one of those things that like modern Gen Zers, you fucking Zoomers, you don't understand, because if a movie is playing, you can very easily look it up.
Mhm.
That was not always a thing.
No.
When I grew up, there were some movies that would be showing on Cinemax or HBO, and if you
Mhm.
had insomnia like myself, you'd be flipping around these channels late at night, and you
Mhm.
would catch bits and pieces of a movie. That was one of those movies. 2001, that movie came out, right?
Yep.
Relevant to what we'll talk about in just a second.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but um, that's what we call a segue, just like a flying a plane. Um,
Good
so.
lord.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for listening to the show. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, consider giving us a like and subscribe. It helps get more people to see it. The more likes and subscribes it gets, the more it populates in your search results, the more people can find it, and it also strokes my digital ego ever so slightly. So, if you're enjoying it and it's not too much trouble, give it a like and subscribe. If you can't be bothered, I understand. Thanks for your time.
You would watch something on TV, only catch a portion of it, which is what this movie was from 2001, which is relevant in just a moment as we'll get to that part when we talk about September 11th. But you would only catch a
Yeah.
portion of the movie and you wouldn't always know the title because sometimes the only way to see the title would be to flip to maybe the TV guide channel and then you'd have to wait and watch as it scrolled and
Hmm.
hope that you could see the scroll without missing it before the movie ended, just to figure out
Yeah.
what the name of the movie was that you were watching. And even then, you hope that you could remember it. There are so many movies that like I have lost and then rediscovered
Hmm.
like that. And the Finder's Fee is one of those, and I definitely highly recommend watching Finder's Fee.
I'm all over it. Yeah, I'm gonna check
It's
that
a
out.
good time. It's a good time. Which gets us to our next topic here, which is also from 2001, which is we are recording
Mhm.
on September 11th.
We are.
So I feel like we kind of have to talk at least for a minute about September 11th.
Absolutely. Well, we did say we'd never forget, so
We did say, where were you? Um, so we gotta follow through with this whole thing
so
here.
yeah.
Um, what do you? I was about to say, what's your favorite September
Oh
11th
my God.
memory?
Uh,
What's your least
well, it was
favorite
very
September
eventful.
11th memory?
Well,
Um,
I remember because I was in high school when that happened. I was a
yeah, yeah.
junior. I should have been a senior, but I'd moved from like two different schools, so it was a whole thing.
I
But
was, yeah,
I
yeah,
was very much not paying attention in class. I was late for school,
yeah.
and I think it was on the radio station they were talking about, it, or it was on something. And I just remember seeing like breaking news on the I think it was on TV, and I saw one of the planes, and I didn't really understand because I was also in a hurry, and I had gotten a ride to school. My mom gave me a ride that morning, and she started talking about it, and it was on the radio, and I was really confused at first because I was like, I don't understand what's happening, and I just kind of, I didn't really register it. But then when I got into class, they were watching it already on TV in the classroom, and that's whenever I got to watch the whole thing unfold, and
Yeah.
just that. And I remember the class; it was a home economics class that I didn't need, but they were just threw me into. Permian sucks. There, I said it. But but the it was the best school I ever dropped out of, though. So, because it was the only one. But we were just sitting there watching it and watching it happen, and just the feeling, like the weighted feeling of it, like that impact. I mean, it was a lot for a 17-year-old,
Yeah, yeah,
and like just feeling the world change.
yeah.
And
Similarly, yeah, yeah.
exactly.
I was in ninth grade, and I remember I remember waking up and not really. My parents always watched the news like on the
Hmm.
TV in the living room. So like as I was getting up and getting dressed, you'd walk around, you'd see the news here and there.
Hmm.
So I caught like bits and pieces of it. And then when my dad was driving us to school, it was on the radio and I heard them talking about it, but I didn't really understand like what exactly was going on. I understood that like a plane had crashed into a building and it
Hmm.
was a big deal. Like it was a big, I knew it was a big deal and I knew it like it wasn't supposed to happen and that it was like, people were very upset about it. And then we got into school and I remember my first period was I think Mrs. Zamora was math.
Hmm.
And so we were in her math class, and then all of a sudden, so we're watching it on TV, and then the class all of a sudden, like the principal comes in at some point, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna move the class to the library." So we all got up and went to the library, And so we're there with the librarian, and she's got a big TV, and so we're all watching it on the TV, and she's watching it.
Yeah.
And she's telling us about like why it's important. She's explaining the librarian is explaining to the eighth and ninth graders like what is going on, right? Like why this is a big deal. And she's
Yeah.
also telling us that at the same time that her son works at the Pentagon, right? And
Oh.
so then a few minutes later, while we're in the like,
Hmm.
it seems like a few minutes, it may have been like longer than that. I don't know. But I know like later on while we're in there, she gets told like, hey, the Pentagon has also been hit. And then she just loses it. And I remember her screaming as loud as she could in the library
Oh
and it
no.
being like a big thing. And then they moved us from the library upstairs to the history teacher's classroom. So we all got split up into like four different history teacher classrooms, and we just watched TV the rest of the day. And
Yep.
then that was it. And no one. And then I went home, and no one ever has stopped talking about it ever since.
No.
And
No.
that's pretty much been it.
Yeah.
It's kind of been a constant thing, either in the foreground or in the background, pretty much
Oh yeah. It
ever
was
since that
definitely
day.
a clear line of demarcation for our generation.
It's definitely like our Kennedy. Yeah. It's like the
Absolutely.
thing that like it kind of bonds us in a way. Like I was talking to
Hmm.
my wife about that. Like everyone of our age remembers exactly where they were and what was going on. And most of
Hmm.
us were in school. So
Yep.
we have these very like unique, distinct memories of exactly where we were. And we shared them in like mass with a lot of other people. So there's a lot of
Yep.
people that can relate to these memories. So it's kind of weird. Someone's one day is going to write a book about all this, I feel like. Um, and it doesn't really apply to like Gen Xers because like our parents were at work and they were
Yeah.
able to because they had the knowledge, at least hopefully, of why it was important. They were able to compartmentalize and understand the
Hmm.
magnitude of what was going on, right?
Yeah.
And the generation younger than us was born
Uh,
so long afterwards. To them it's meme worthy, so it doesn't
right.
have that same like gravitas that it does for our
Hmm.
generation. So it is one of
Exactly.
those things that is like a unique kind of like millennial thing where it is kind of
Hmm.
like our candy. For maybe for Gen Zers it'll be like COVID for them, where it's like they a lot of them really remember what happened, like where they were
Yeah.
whenever COVID went down. Whereas for like our generation, it was like I was at fucking work. It was a massive inconvenience,
Right.
but I still had to go to work the next day.
Yeah.
It fucking sucked. Like
Hey, I
nothing.
was already working from home, so I was fine.
Say you were good. Yeah, you
Yep.
had us beat by a country mile. You saw it
Yeah. I
coming.
was well
This
ahead
is
of the
why you're
curve.
on this podcast, so we can predict any future catastrophic events coming in. Speaking of catastrophic events, I guess we'll get to tonight's episode. We've
Yeah.
stalled long enough as we've talked about the current events, our lives, and
It's been
the
an eventful
wonderful
time.
James Earl Jones, who
Absolutely.
has sadly left us. I'm gonna miss him.
Mm.
He's one of those actors that I knew it was gonna be a good movie if James Earl Jones was in it. I was like, oh, James Earl Jones
Absolutely.
doesn't do shitty movies. Like if he's in this, something's good about it. He was
Absolutely.
even good in Welcome Home, Roscoe fucking Jenkins. Like, and that's saying something. Like, so speaking of Welcome Home, Roscoe fucking Jenkins, tonight we're talking about Resident Evil.
Resident Evil.
Let's just get into the background of this movie because I think this is the most interesting part is the background of this movie, if I'm being real. Uh, so the background of this movie was it came out in 2002, but it had an interesting production history that led up all the way back until like the mid to late 90s. Um, so before this movie was taken over by Paul Anderson of Mortal Kombat and Event Horizon fame before this, um, this movie was obviously based on the video game series Resident Evil. Do you have any love or knowledge of the series or appreciation for the video games?
I played. I've only really played the first one, and that was back, whenever I had to, because we didn't really own games back then.
Yeah,
At our house, we rented from
yeah,
like Blockbuster or something. So I would
same.
rent it, and I've played chunks of it, or and I saw other people's saved games of it, things like that,
Yeah,
and so I'd see other friends play it at their house and stuff like that. So I have.
that's kind of my experience too.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
peripheral, but
I've played it. It was so I grew up with a Nintendo 64 more so than a
mhm,
PlayStation. In Resident Evil 2 on the Nintendo 64, the controls were fucking awful. So I
Oh,
remember renting it and trying to play it. Remember renting it from Blockbuster, trying to play it and failing to even really get past like maybe 40, maybe like the first 40, 50 minutes of it because I
dang.
just kept running into walls and not like being able to walk forward and getting killed by zombies and just getting really frustrated. Didn't have much fun with it. Went over to a friend's house, played it on the PlayStation. It's a bit better
Yeah.
and watched him play it and got into the series a little bit. I've seen and or played good chunks of Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, and Resident
Hmm.
Evil 4. That's about where I ended with the series. I know they're still going. There's like Resident Evil 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
There's
yeah,
a shellload of them.
yeah.
But it's not something that I have a special affinity for. I
No.
will say that I thought the story then was fucking stupid. And so
Yeah.
basing a movie directly off of the games seemed to be fucking stupid. And I feel like the producers who bought the rights to the games agreed because they chose not to choose the script that was just basically a direct continuation of the games.
Right.
Because one of the passes of the script was written by the guy who wrote, I think it was Halloween 4 or Halloween 5. Not
Hmm.
sure which. I want to say Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers. The guy that wrote that wrote an original script for Mortal Kombat for Resident Evil, which is basically just the movie, the game. It had a lot of the same characteristics.
Oh
They ended
yeah.
up not making that. At the same time, Resident Evil 2 is coming out in Japan, and one of the major inspirations is the horror director from Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead fame. We'll talk about him a lot on this podcast. George Romero.
Oh yeah.
George Romero directed a teaser trailer for Resident Evil 2, the game that came out in Japan, that actually stars some, at the time, some kind of younger actors who would end up kind of becoming rather popular a couple of years later. Um,
Hmm.
that didn't really get seen much out of Japan, but the success of that spot led to George Romero writing a script for Resident Evil. And his version is very interesting. You can actually find the script. It is available now.
Ooh.
That you can go and read it. It's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't get to read all of it, but the parts I read were really interesting. He changed a couple things here and there, but he kind of stayed pretty true to like a combination of the games of Resident Evil 1 and 2.
Hmm.
It was very gory, very, very gory. There's a YouTube
Oh
video
yeah.
that goes into the details all about why George Romero's Resident Evil was never made. It's a great YouTube series. I'll link it in the little bio of this episode because it was one of the things I consulted when I was doing my research on this.
Hmm.
And it didn't get made largely because the gore factor would have made it cost prohibitive. So
Hmm.
the amount of money it would have cost to make the movie would have made it very difficult for them to offset the expense of making the movie because if there was that level of gore, the movie could have very easily been an NC-17 or an R, which
Oh.
would have limited its markability. And
Hmm.
so they decided never to make George Romero's script. Then we get into the writer director of this train wreck, Paul Anderson, who
Yeah.
took over this movie, and he wrote this movie on spec. So that means that
Hmm.
he wrote it kind of for free on the and then sold it to the studio if they wanted to buy it. And the reason he did this was because if they decided to purchase it, he could say it was a Resident Evil movie, incorporate a few more Resident Evil elements. If they decided not to purchase
Uh,
it, he could just take what he had, call it a different title, make it his zombie movie, and carry
hmm.
on and not need the license at all. Which is why this movie doesn't, even though it's called Resident Evil,
Yeah.
the Resident Evil elements to it are very minimal. And there are some
There
obviously.
are some. They
But you
talk
could
about the T
easily
virus.
you
That's
talk about the
something.
T-Rex. You could easily change the name of everything
Absolutely.
and change a few plot elements and a few names,
Hmm.
and the movie would never it wouldn't be any different.
It
Like you don't
it actually got to the
necessarily
point
need to.
where I almost thought I had misunderstood what was happening. I had to start it over, like about 20 minutes through. I was like, "Did I do something wrong? Am I looking at something wrong? Did I pick the wrong movie? I this everything matches what I thought I knew."
Yeah.
So I had to start it over just so I could actually like pay more attention because I was like, I'm not following. This doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to what I
This
thought I
this is
knew.
confusing to me. Yeah.
So yeah.
So the movie is directed and written by, like we said, Paul Anderson, who before this movie has had directed some pretty interesting movies. He did like a little indie movie called what was it called? I think it was called Sleeper, I want to say. I could be wrong on that. I'm trying to remember. I have notes, but they're smudged now. So I
Oh.
think it was called Sleeper. Um, haven't seen it, but it looks interesting compared to the rest of his body of work, which
Hmm.
is a lot of video game movies. So he is the guy who did Mortal Kombat, which is
Hmm.
maybe one of the better video game movies ever made.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not saying much.
It's not.
But it was not bad. He also did before this, he had done Event Horizon,
That movie messed me up.
which is a underrated movie.
Yeah.
Um, I
Is
think
it
a
really?
lot of, I think
Do
it's a
people
little
not?
underrated. I think
Do
it's a
people not
little
appreciate
underrated.
it?
I feel like a
I
lot of people
liked it.
think it's kind of shitty. I think some people probably
Really?
feel like it's shitty. Yeah, I feel like there's some people who probably do not like that movie. I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll have to look it up.
Well, yeah, we'll have to
We
see.
ask you,
'Cause,
the audience, what do you think about Event Horizon?
yeah, Event Horizon.
I think it's underrated. I think it's his
I
best
enjoyed
movie.
it,
I think
and
of
it
all of his
really
movies,
freaked me out.
yeah, it's a fucking freaky movie. I think of all the movies he's ever directed, I think it's his best movie by like a fucking mile.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, it's if we're gonna compare him to like Michael Bay, um, it's his Pain and Gain. It's like
Absolutely.
a really good movie that stands out amongst a lot of maybe not so good movies.
Yeah.
So after he took on Resident Evil, his career has been mostly making movies with his wife, who is also in this movie,
Hmm.
and mostly making video game adaptations, comic book adaptations, graphic novel adaptations. Man does a lot of adaptations. If it's a video game movie and it's been made in the last couple of years and it has Mila Jokovic in it, you can pretty
Yeah.
much guarantee he had something to do with it.
Yeah.
They work together a lot. They also did the Three Musketeers. There are, I think, six sequels to this Resident Evil movie, and
Really?
she is involved in all of them. And I believe
Oh
he
wow.
is directing and producing all of them. Maybe not directing all of them, but he definitely is involved in pretty much all of them.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, the whole thing is a lot of them, which is gets us to the main actor in this, or the main actress in this movie, which is there's two main stars really, is how the movie markets itself, which is Michelle Rodriguez, who before this had been in Girl Fight and Fast and Furious,
Yeah.
had been in some pretty successful movies, had made a name for herself. She
Yeah.
is obviously the best actress in this movie by a
Oh,
fucking
big time.
huge amount. And the other actress that really is the main star is the main actress, which is Mila Jokovic, who before this had been in several movies, sci-fi
Several.
classics such as Fifth Element,
Hmm.
um, and
Dazed and
she's
Confused.
Dazed and Confused. She was in Spike Lee's He's Got Game.
Hmm.
She was in a very disturbing movie to watch in retrospect called Cuffs, um,
Yes.
where she plays Christian Slater's like high school girlfriend, even though he's
Yeah.
not in high school, and it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she had been in a bunch of movies, and she is the main star of this movie. And this movie came out on March 15th, 2002, and
Yeah.
it cost $33 million to make. And do you want to know how
Wow.
much money it made?
I actually do.
$103 million.
Really?
103 million. Yeah. So it made its money back and then some.
Wow. Okay.
Did not open number one though. It opened up number two in the country behind Ice Age. The first Ice Age movie came out the same weekend.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, yeah. Number one rock song in the country at the time, since this movie is new metal, the movie, I'm going to say. Do you want to know what
Yes.
the number one rock song was on March 15th, 2002?
Oh, I'm just gonna
Take a
say, was it
guess. Think
a
about it. Think about it.
maybe a
Think
Linkin
about it.
Park song?
You're not far off. You're not far off.
Uh,
Think a little bit
oh,
dirtier. Think dirtier. Think dirtier and think what if Kurt Cobain didn't kill himself and
oh
decided
no.
instead to be from Florida and be a piece of shit?
Oh, you just described a few people to me.
It's true. True, not
Oh man, I'm
specific
trying to
enough.
think of who's from Florida. I don't actually know.
I don't even know if they're from Florida, honestly. I'm just
Oh,
throwing
okay.
that out there. He looks like he could be from Florida. I'll
Oh,
just
I
tell you.
gotcha.
The answer is Blurry by Puddle of Mud.
Oh, God, I hated that song even then.
It's a bad song. Butt
It's so
rock thing. It was
bad.
butt rock the song.
Like, and I was kind of okay with that kind of music back then, but even then, I did not like that song.
No, no. Even then, I don't think anyone likes Puddle of. I don't think Puddle of Mud likes Puddle of Mud. Are there Puddle of Mud fans? Is
I'm
it like a
really
guilty pleasure
curious.
band? Is it one of those bands that some people are like, oh no, I love Puddle of Mud? Like, there's Creed guilty pleasurists out there.
Like, I will listen
Are
to
there
and
Puddle of Mud
genuinely enjoy.
forgivers?
I
What do
can't
the Puddle
imagine.
of Mud fans call themselves? Are they mutters?
But puddlers,
Pud, Pud of mutters.
pud,
Pud,
the
Pud muds.
puddle
That's what they
skippers,
call them. They call
something.
them the puddle skippers.
Like,
The
I
puddle
will
skipper
even
gang.
grant myself one Nickelback song that I do actually enjoy, and I can't
Blasphemy.
bring myself to enjoy a single Puddle of Mud song. It's
I
bad.
don't enjoy either. They can all stop making music and I would be happy. This music is that kind of music does show up in this movie a little bit here. So
Yeah,
I guess we'll get into the plot of this movie. It's not really all that interesting, honestly.
not really.
The way
No.
this movie is written is basically like every 10 minutes some big thing happens and then we get just a
Yeah.
bunch of nothing. And like if the characters were well written and interesting, then that nothing where they're talking and we're getting that
Hmm.
exposition and that character development, that would be interesting. But instead we just get like a bunch of SWAT team mumbo jumbo, a bunch of
Yeah.
tech speech, and a bunch of Michelle Rodriguez grunting and bleeding. Which
Yep.
if that's your kink, that's your kink. But like that's pretty much the entire movie outside of
Hmm.
like the few little like interesting moments that happen. So
Yeah.
the movie
It was
obviously.
most.
Oh,
I
good.
just had a lot of questions the whole time. I was like,
Exactly.
why? Why is this the entrance? Why is like all of that? And
The
then of
movie
course you
is
have
a jumbled mess of
it really
incoherent
is.
nonsense. The more you watch it, the less sense it makes somehow.
Hmm.
Which is weird that they made so many other movies after it because the rest of the movies in this series make more sense.
Oh, do they?
They're not nearly as convoluted. At least I'm trying. I mean, I've seen all of the Resident Evil movies. Fun fact, I own all the Resident Evil movies. Don't ask me
That
why.
is a fun fact.
I'm a glutton for punishment. Yeah, me and my wife love them. They're awful. They're all bad. I don't. If people will be like, yeah, Resident Evil, there's a couple good. No, they're all bad movies. They're all bad.
Dang.
They're all terrible. They're all bad movies. There's not a single good one. Some of them are better than others, but none of them are good. Um, the one where they get on a boat is fucking weird as fuck. Like that's the one where I had to stop a couple times when we watched it and me and my wife and be like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Why are they on this boat? Why are these things happening? I don't understand this movie.
It was in that
This
movie
movie is
boat
not
era.
exactly. This movie does not quite reach that level of like what the fuck is going on, but ooh,
No,
it flirts with that line.
it does,
It likes to tiptoe that line.
but it does it in a very uninteresting way. Like especially how it comes
Exactly.
away from it.
And full of new metal just blaring at you,
Oh
looking back
yeah.
at me, like it just like. So the movie starts with this umbrella corporation, which is right away the creativity
Yeah.
of like a 3-year-old, like so the umbrella corporation. Ah, I wonder if
Yeah.
they're evil. Who could have guessed? Turns out the umbrella corporation is evil. Um, we see a bunch of random employees getting killed off on their day of work, which just fucking
Yep.
sucks for us working men.
I was about to say.
Just let a motherfucker clock in and clock out without dying at
Right.
work. Like, I don't got to worry about this shit. But all these people are dying. We don't really care about any of these people because we only know them for fractions of seconds at most.
Yeah.
We do get to know one lady for a little while, and the camera kind of focuses on her, and then we see
Mhm.
her get on not escalator, sorry, an elevator, and then we have the most famous, not the most famous, one of the more famous scenes from the movie is the elevator scene where her head goes up, and then it goes
Yep.
down, then it goes back up again, and and that kind of gets to the first good thing about this movie is Paul Anderson is not a bad director. He's
No.
a frustrating director
Right.
because he's kind of lazy at times. he has shown like he'll show in moments that he can make like a really kind of good, competent, good movie, and
Mm-hmm.
then he'll go back to just kind of doing like the rest of this Resident Evil movie, which
Yeah.
is just like nonsense. I wish he didn't write this movie because I feel like if he could have directed someone else's work here, it would have been better. Because he does these like little horror scenes like really well, like that. That was a cool part. Like it's it's a little scary. It's
Mm-hmm.
thrilling. You get to the head thing going down. Like that's they
It was
revisited it in the
tense.
later movies. Yeah, it's tense. So everyone dies, at least we think. And then we wake up to Mila Jokovic, who is woken up, and her name is Alice. And
Yep.
then we get to see that this movie is maybe a really poor man's version of Alice in Wonderland. I'm going to call it Alice in Zombieland, because the movie makes a lot of weird references to Alice in Wonderland, like in the
Yes.
naming of the characters. And I don't know why he does this. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't.
No,
I don't think it goes anywhere.
it
Um,
really doesn't. No.
like I even went back and looked at the Lewis and Clark. I mean, the Lewis and Clark, the Lewis and Car- Lewis
Oh,
and
Lewis
Clark.
Carroll's.
Yeah, Lewis Carroll.
Yeah.
I said Lewis and Clark. That's a different show. Lewis Carroll's story, and I was like, okay, like what parallels are there? Because like I'm trying to see like is this movie supposed to be like a retelling of that story, but now we're with zombies. Is like,
Yeah.
do the characters have like, or is it like a big symbolism? And I came to the conclusion that no, I don't think it is. I think he just maybe was smoking some weed and was watching Alice in Wonderland and thought like Alice, that's a good name, and then was just like, well, I got one, I might as well call the other one Red Queen. I
Yeah.
don't know. I could be wrong there. But I
Oh,
tried searching for the
I doubt you
symbolism,
are.
and I just couldn't connect the dots in a way that was like, yes, this is a complete through line of how these two movies are connected. So Alice wakes up, and we immediately get confronted by three things. One, she doesn't have a memory, which is convenient for the plot of this movie.
Yep.
Two, the SEAL Team Six is showing up and smashing in the windows. And three, the soundtrack of this movie is extremely loud new metal, blaring
Yes.
at you about every 20 minutes or so.
Mhm.
We'll get to the soundtrack when we get to the end.
Yeah.
I made note of that. So SEAL Team 6 shows up and they tell Alice that, hey, you're coming with us. And so they all board the next plot narrative, which is going to take them all on this train to the middle of where the outbreak started at. Because don't you know, this is a post apocalypse movie. There's been a virus that's been unleashed. That's what we found out what happened at work, right? All these people that have died, now it's spreading everywhere, and they got to go contain this shit before it spreads everywhere in the world. Um,
Hmm.
Spoiler alert, if you're watching the movie, there's been like three games up to this point, so we know that it gets out. So
Right.
I don't exactly know why we're starting with like, can we stop it? Like, no, we know it doesn't. We should have maybe just started with Resident Evil Apocalypse or a different one, but it made a bit more sense to narratively
Yeah.
start with that one instead of starting with this kind of like prequel. But so one of the SEAL team members is Michelle Rodriguez, and we also get a couple other guys that are in there. There's a couple connections to the series in that we get to go to a train. We get to
Hmm.
see shitty pictures that Alice finds. That
Yep.
those are all things that are in the game, and we get some flashbacks. That's always fun.
Oh, it always is.
Yeah, flashbacks galore. That's really how this movie likes to tell its story is just a mixture of flashbacks. I wish this movie was gorier, because I feel like if it had more gore, at least then like all the flashbacks and building to these little scenes of carnage that happen would be more interesting. But the movie does
Yeah.
play the gore real low. I believe it came out as a PG-13 movie, which would maybe explain why there's not really a whole lot of like carnage in this movie. It's rather
Yeah.
tame.
It seems like it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, SEAL Team Six has decided that they gotta go fuck some shit up. And they're gonna go kill the Red Queen so they can shut down this hive and that'll stop the infection from spreading everywhere else. And then it's job well done. Let's get out of here and get some beers. But shit goes a little kooky as soon as they get off the train. So far, what have you thought of the movie as we've gotten about like a fourth of the way in?
Yeah. That was. I was getting real confused because I was like, I don't recognize a single name yet.
Yeah, no,
And
none of these are from the video game. Not a single one yet.
yeah, see, and that I didn't realize that until I had to like stop it, and because I was like, I'm not paying enough attention. So
Yeah,
I had to go back, and then I'd be like, okay, fresh, don't think about the game at all. That's
nope.
that's
Yep.
just stopping me. So
Yeah,
I
I feel like it's best to go into this movie with no knowledge of the game at all. Like it's
right.
almost better that way.
Yeah, oh, I think
Um,
so because it's almost. I think the only things is just the names of the corporation. That's it,
yeah.
and the virus. Like that's about
The
it.
names,
Oh,
the
and there's
corporation, the
zombies.
virus. Yeah, there's a couple little like Easter eggs here and there, but like I said early
Well,
on, you
yeah.
can remove those and or not talk about them, and it would literally makes no impact. Like you
Hmm.
would just have to change tiny little things, and that would be it. Um, so SEAL Team Six goes through with their plan, and we get to the next really cool scene of this movie, which is the slice up scene, where they
That's
have to go into the little laser field, and for some reason the laser field becomes active, and you literally they get shish kebab to death.
it is
Pretty much the
quite a
entire
scene.
team. It is the most memorable part of this movie. And it's similar to like the elevator scene in that like it's pretty well directed. It's
Yeah,
stylish. It's fun to watch. Like it's nice. It's another one of those scenes that you can be like, yeah, he can make a good movie.
yeah.
He could really do like he could have made a really good movie here. Um, Maybe not this movie, but
Well, no, but it was a
then
real clever way to get rid of a big part of the team. So
yes, it does get rid of a lot of the people taking up a lot of the payday of this movie. This movie was a
yeah,
little pricey. We got to cut the budget. Let's kill them off. So the few remaining people that are left now have to deal with the zombies that are being unleashed.
Mhm.
And that's when, and then all of a sudden, this movie goes from being kind of a boring, weird, dull, very dull
Kind of a
espionage, undercover,
yeah,
who's working for who's cheating on who, like
yeah.
noir
And then
thing,
also you have
and then now zombies.
like the first half of the movie. I just all I could think about was how Mila was just kind of like a wandering little kid through the whole thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and
It's
then
very much like
afterward,
Alice in Zombieland. Like she
yeah,
kind of is just like, what? Like I don't have any knowledge of anything. I work for Umbrella.
mm-hmm,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm married? Am I married to that guy?
yeah.
Ooh,
It
how am
was,
I married to that guy? When did that happen?
and that's a weird part that still doesn't sit right with me because it's like they're undercover operatives that are protecting this entry to this underground tunnel, train to get to this underground facility, but they have to be disguised and as it's so weird that they have to be
Yeah.
undercover as a married couple in a mansion out in somewhere. Like, why couldn't that just be a facility manned by security and stuff? Like,
Yeah.
why did it have to be two people posing as a married couple? That
Cocaine's a
part
hell of a
didn't.
drug.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't know.
I
I don't get that.
I wasn't really sure. Yeah, the movie it kind of crawls up its own butt with its narrative. It just doesn't
Hmm.
really go. It doesn't. It never really fully clicks in a way that really makes sense like you want it to. There's a lot
Right.
of loose threads and hints and
Hmm.
flashbacks, and you have all these. So one of the characters that is introduced along the way and not part of the SEAL Team Six, or maybe he is. I who knows? I don't
It's
remember.
yeah,
It ends up being a guy she's married to,
yeah.
but neither one of them are necessarily like any kind of in love or affinity for each other. They don't even know they're married. Apparently, their minds
Right.
have been completely washed of each other, but they have flashbacks, obviously.
Hmm.
And so that'll like piece together how they're related, you know, be like, oh, yes, I remember rushing his hair. Oh, yeah, my ring, things like that.
Right.
And the zombies in the movie, you would think add a level of tension and some interest, some intrigue to it. But unfortunately, in this movie, they're kind of just boring
Yeah.
because there it's a horde of zombies, but and this is what George Romero's version I think would have been different because in his versions of Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, and Dawn of the Dead, and Land of the Dead, and Survival of the Dead, and maybe a little bit of Diary of the Dead, the zombies always kind of stand as a metaphor for something.
Right.
They come to represent some kind of societal commentary that he's making,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that without that, with zombies like this, just this horde of like massive zombies, they're supposed to come across as menacing, but because of their lack of representation, they almost just kind of come across as boring in this story
Yeah.
because all they represent is just the movie ending. And I'm like, yeah, let's kill everyone so we can get this shit over with.
Yeah. Right.
Let's end this shit. I don't care about any of these people. They don't
No.
care about themselves. I don't think they
No.
even know this movie is going on. They seem virtually lost, which is a good metaphor for the game, I guess, because half the time I played it, I was fucking lost.
Oh
I
yeah.
was like, I
Just.
don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to go get a green card so I can put some shit in a box, so I can go through a door, so I can get some more shit out of a box, to go put more shit in a box, to go find ammo to kill some zombies, to go put more
Yep.
shit in a box. Like,
And
I'm
all
good.
the while, the camera angles are changing in
Yes.
weird ways and throwing you off, making you walk into walls, and yeah.
Yes, yeah, I understand people's nostalgia for it. You know,
Yeah.
I also have some nostalgia for some video games that are probably bad. I love Final Fantasy Tactics for once, but like
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean that I think everyone would like that. And Resident Evil definitely falls into that category.
Right.
So they meet the Red Queen, who is the CGI disaster of horrible age
Oh.
CGI. It makes it look bad, real fast.
Oh yeah.
You can tell it hasn't really aged very well. We get more CGI, and
Mhm.
then she tells them we're all going to die down here.
We're all
And then the
gonna die.
movie basically becomes them trying to get out of this area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not presented like with a tense like raid style, like we have to run and get the hell out of here.
Right.
Like there's some tension here because timer is going down. The timer is going down,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, I'm rooting for the timer. I
Yeah.
want the movie. I want everyone to die. They
Mm-hmm.
don't like none of these people seem to give me much reason that they should be living.
Yeah.
It
Right.
feels like I feel like if we just kill everyone, then the zombie outbreak doesn't happen. And at the
Yeah.
very least, we save a little bit of people, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the movie kind of continues on. They try to get out. The zombies attack. Michelle Rodriguez's character gets attacked. She gets bitten. She survives. The other SEAL Team Six members that didn't die, a couple of them get bitten and
Mm-hmm.
die off.
Yeah.
We get down to just a few um,
I,
characters
I
left.
I do want to kind of flesh that out a little bit about Michelle Rodriguez getting bit and surviving. That's her entire character because it just keeps happening.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just
Which I have to feel like she maybe asked for. Like, I feel
right.
like if I was going to be in this movie and I'm Michelle Rodriguez, I'm like, yeah, I'll be in this shitty zombie movie, whatever, this video game shit. But like, I want to be bitten like 150 times.
Right.
And I want to constantly not die and just keep fighting back and just be like the most badass fucking person in the world. And just kind of really stick it to people about like just constantly getting attacked by these zombies and never letting them kill me because like she does an amazing job with that.
Oh, absolutely.
And she is the best character in the movie. She's the most
Oh, by
interesting
far.
part of this movie. Once
Absolutely.
Michelle Rodriguez really is the one that kind of makes you want to continue watching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still not rooting for her as a character because
No.
she comes across like a horrible human being in the movie. But at the very least, she's kind of like a badass. Like she's the Jesse Ventura of this movie. Um, in the reference to Predator, there was some
Yeah.
Jesse
Yep.
Ventura. I ain't got time to bleed. I forget why he was in the news recently. He did something, or maybe I've just been watching a bunch of wrestling shit. So there are few remaining members of SEAL Team Six who are mostly dead, and we have now seen that there aren't just zombies here. We got mutants and all kinds of shit coming after these
Mm-hmm.
characters left. They're just trying to get out, and then all of a sudden we see the double cross.
Yes.
Mila's husband is not who we think he is. He's not who he thinks he is, but he just remembered who he is because it was important for the plot for him to remember who he is.
Yeah. And he embraces it right away.
He does. He
Yeah.
does. For having a crisis of faith, he accepts it very quickly.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Whenever
it's
I've had mental breakdowns, it usually doesn't go so well so quickly.
right.
So I'm glad he was able to recover and bounce back so quickly, really showing it up for the rest of us men out there.
Yeah. He didn't have a whole total recall, trying to like remember who he is and then regret things. No, he was ready to be like, you screwed over the corporation. This is who we work for. This is, he had loyalty, if
Exactly.
nothing else.
So now, because of this, Red Queen is helping them. So the Chat GPT has come to life, and it's telling them how to get out of this movie, how to solve this plot device that it's created for
Mm,
itself. And so they continue on. They're able to almost get out just free. Oh, the movie's going to end peacefully. But wait, there's more.
mm-hmm.
Different groups of people come in, and now we get told about the Nemesis program as
Yeah.
her our main character Alice's only remaining friend is swept away, and we get the movie set up for the sequel as she starts the end of the movie like she does at the beginning of the movie, nude,
Yep.
not remembering what the hell just happened,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to piece together what is going on in this movie.
Yep.
So the movie kind of ends and starts in the exact same place, which
Yeah,
is
it's a real
interesting.
nice bookend.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that there's a whole anti-venom subplot about who's trying to get
Oh
the
yeah.
anti-venom here and there. That is a thing that happens that they're like fighting over. It's kind of just a MacGuffin, like a thing for them to
Yeah.
go after because the zombies are completely fucking boring because they don't
Totally.
represent anything. I
Mm-hmm.
think if the zombies had come to represent something, then you could have had the characters fighting against what the zombies were, which would have been an
Right.
interesting enough MacGuffin.
Yeah.
I think if you only need the antidote thing because like your zombies are shitty because you're not a good writer. That's just my opinion.
Yep.
That's just my opinion on this movie. It's not a very good movie.
It's not a very good movie.
It's not a very good movie. You're not really missing a whole lot here. When it comes to Into the World movies, this one went about viruses and about zombies and about plagues and all of those type things.
Yeah.
It's not super good. It does set up a better movie. The sequel to this movie is a
Yeah.
bit better. It's a bit
Okay.
better. It is a bit better. We're not going to watch it next, but it is a bit
Okay. No,
better. Slightly better. I will say that. I'm not going to say like, oh, it's like a perfect Resident Evil apocalypse. No,
right.
it is not that. It is not it is not a perfect
But
movie.
it does step up.
It steps up. It introduces more characters from the games. It introduces more elements from the games. It builds a little on
Okay.
the post-apocalyptic element of the first movie, and that like the world has kind of ended. The third
Mm.
movie gets into that too with its introduction of like a desert wasteland Mad Max thing.
Oh.
But altogether, I feel like the movie is lacking in a lot of different elements and is yeah, kind of not maybe the best representation of the game, but like the
Mm.
game also has a really fucking stupid story. So I don't know if you necessarily want to use the game as like you're like, well, it it doesn't live up to the expectations that the game set forth. It's like, yeah, but have you actually looked at the story of Resident Evil? Because it's fucking illogical. It makes no goddamn
Right.
sense. It's just dumb. So maybe basing your movie off of that is maybe not the best way to go. So I kind of see like putting a little detour on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it left a lot to be desired when it
Oh
came
yeah. No,
to
it was.
this particular movie, which does get us to the end of the movie in the soundtrack.
Yes.
Because I did say we can talk about the soundtrack. Do you want to know which bands appeared on the soundtrack for this movie?
Desperately. I
All right.
recognized one for sure in
Okay.
the end credits. I
Okay.
knew.
Give me the one that you know.
Oh, that was Slipknot for sure.
Slipknot is the very first one. Yes, Slipknot is on
Yeah.
this. We also
Yes.
got Coal Chamber,
Oh, okay. I hear it.
Crystal
Yeah, I
Method,
can hear it. Oh, okay.
Marilyn Manson,
Yep. That makes sense.
Fear Factory,
Oh, okay.
Static X,
Oh,
Ramstein,
really? Okay.
yes, Method Man,
Okay.
Saliva,
Uh,
Edema,
okay. Yeah, I remember them.
Mudvayne,
Nice.
and Il Nino.
Oh, I forgot about them.
And also a weird appearance by Depeche Mode.
Okay. So nice little detour there.
Yeah, this movie has a 36% on Rotten Tomatoes. Some people
Yeah.
seem to like it. I remember I went and saw it in theaters when I was a kid. I
Yeah.
remember I saw this movie like I said. I own this movie on Blu-ray. I've seen
Mhm.
this movie several times. Um, it's not a very good movie. It's not a very good movie.
It's really not.
Uh, but it is kind of nostalgic in that like I remember this being like the first, maybe not the first big video game movie, because I remember Mortal Kombat and its
Mm-hmm.
sequel, and I remember Mario Brothers coming out before this. So there were other
Yeah.
big video game movies that had come out before this, but I do remember this coming out and making a shit ton of money, and starting a bunch of other sequels that just finally stopped recently. I think right around 2020 they stopped making these, maybe.
Wait, really?
Like, it is a long time. They kept churning them out for a while. They were like the Fast and Furious movies. There's about 6 or 7 of the Resident Evil movies.
Dang, I did
There's a
not know
lot.
that.
Yes, there's a lot. There's not just 3. They keep going. I'll say the first, like I said, the first one is not good. Second
No.
one is a little bit better. Third one
Mm-hmm.
is about on par with the second one, and then they kind of go in a weird direction after that, and it's hard to figure out where the hell is that's going.
Hmm.
All right,
Wow.
so that's tonight's episode. We're
Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna once a and welcome back. There we go.
There we
I
go.
jumped the gun just a minute there. So welcome to the end of the show. Thanks for watching. Had a lot of fun talking about a fun video game movie about the
Yeah,
end of the world, Resident Evil. And now we're going to choose what we're going to watch for this week. Are you ready to do our rolling of the dice, Travis?
I am so ready.
Okay, I have my big list of movies, over 100 movies on this list. Let's hit the dice and see. 24, which gets us to.
Oh,
Oh, this is a big one.
yeah.
Hold on, let me see. Let me make sure before I say that this is even one that we can find, because I don't
Oh,
want to
okay.
spoil it if it's one that we cannot find. Okay, got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Planet of the Apes from 2001, starring Mark Wahlberg, directed
Oh,
by Tim Burton.
that is a big movie.
Yes, this is a big one. Now, the fans are going to learn a lot about Mark Wahlberg from us.
My favorite actor, Mark Wahlberg.
Your Fern, what's that like?
What?
Uh,
No.
what? What?
Oh my god.
Racist? I could
Oh.
never be racist. Um, yeah, Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, he's so me and Travis. We lived together for a little while there, and during that time that we lived together, we both discovered that we had an affinity for Mark Wahlberg movies.
Yes.
Both because his acting and sometimes because his acting. He's
Oh,
uh he's memorable in a lot of movies he's been in,
absolutely.
especially the movies like The Happening, The
Oh
Departed,
god. The
and
Departed.
The
Oh.
Departed, and this lovely movie Planet of the Apes, where he
Oh yes.
plays, I believe, a scientist. I believe he's supposed to be a scientist.
Like
I
an
think he's
astronaut,
an
scientist.
astronaut, an astronaut. Well, scientist, astronaut, tomato,
Yeah.
tomato. They're
Well, he
similar
does
enough.
do studies.
He studies things. He studies
Yeah.
monkeys
He
and
studies
planets
monkeys.
and apes and this is the movie Tim
Oh.
Burton wants you to forget he made. Um, I don't
I
think
want
he
to
wants
forget he
to.
made it
I was
because
gonna say he's making sequels to some of his past movies. I don't know if he's gonna come out with Planet of the Apes
oh
to
no.
return to the
Oh
Mark
no.
Wahlberg. Okay, so yeah, next week we will watch Planet of the Apes and talk all about Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, and dear God, that's going to probably be a lot of
Oh,
poor Boston accents,
oh, it is.
and
I'm already getting ready.
that's going to be a good time. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.
Take it easy.
Ah, what is that? Ah, what is that?